What happens when we are in the middle of a conflict, when we are struggling with two disagreements or two thoughts that are not agreeing with each other? How do we get through that? How do we handle those conflicts? We're going to be talking about that this week on episode 241 of The Relaxed Male. This is The Relaxed Male, a show that comes to you each week helping men to remove the nice guy from their life so they can actually live their life on their terms. Join the host, certified coach Brian Goodwin, as he helps men step out of their heads and become free from the thoughts that bind them. Hey man, hello and welcome to The Relaxed Male. I'm your host Brian, and I am a certified men's coach that helps men who are just neck deep in the suffering of lives. These are the men who are struggling with their relationships, trying to find a way to make their bride happy, yet all they end up doing is making themselves miserable in the process. So how do we change that? How do we change our approach to our marriage so that we actually have a marriage that is full of love, happiness, and peace? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because one of the hardest parts that a lot of people face with relationships is they just run face first into conflict. And there's so many different things that happen when you're in a disagreement, in a fight, in an argument, some type of disagreement that is just causes things to bubble up more and more and more and more. And people start getting angry and start yelling and all this other stuff. And all of a sudden we have these hurt feelings and people start blaming each other for different things, and it gets out of hand. And eventually the loving couple doesn't look like a loving couple anymore. All of a sudden you've got husband, he's sleeping on the bed or sleeping on the couch, and the wife is sitting in bed. She's sitting there texting her best friend. And we wonder where in the world this went wrong. Why did this end up happening? And it is such a problem that a lot of people actually get into just a couple, 3 fights, and they decide, never mind, this, you're not making me happy. And that's one of the big problems that so many people face, is because can you make somebody happy? Well, if you've listened to any of the shows that I've done, the answer is no. You can't make anybody happy. You can't make anybody sad. You can't hurt somebody's feelings, because it's not actually anything that's possible. Person has to have the thought that creates the emotion. So you have to have a thought that creates emotion. Emotion creates an action. Action creates a result. That's called the model. And so if your model's is one of where you're getting your feelings hurt because your husband said something, or your husband you're getting your feelings hurt because your wife said something, then you're going to have a lot of strife. First off, we want to look at, what do we mean by conflict? Conflict is just a disagreement, just you think something should be done some way, or say you went and saw a movie. You come out, your wife thought it was just an absolutely horrible movie. You thought it was one of the best movies of all time. Y'all saw this exact same movie. So the movie itself is not the problem. That is just the circumstance. Our circumstance is neutral every time. A neutral circumstance until you apply a thought to it. You apply the thought that the movie was great. Your wife applied the thought that the movie was horrible. And then we've had the disagreement. We do not agree. So we start having a discussion, maybe even a fight. You're always paying the bills late, or something along those lines. These are all just thoughts that we're sharing. We get back and forth with each other. And because we share these thoughts the way we do, we cause the other person to have thoughts about the thoughts that you shared. And that's what a discussion is. And some people, when it comes to a conflict, they become very avoidant, become very anxious about it. And so they turn away from it. They disappear. They try to appease the other person. They avoid the conflict in some form, fashion, or another. And in doing so, they never actually fix the problem. They just say, we're not playing this game. We're going to go away and we're doing something else. And so they leave and they act like they disappear for a little bit and then come back and act like nothing ever happened. Act like the the problem at hand, whether the bills weren't paid or the bills were paid, or the movie was good or the movie was bad or whatever. They have the thought of, if I step away, act like it didn't happen, it won't ever rise up again. And depending on what the conversation or the discomfort or the conflict or whatever it is was about, it may be something that never goes away, or it may be just something that is agreed to never be discussed about ever again. So when we have that conflict, when we have a major disagreement, and say, like, how are we going to raise the kids, or are you going to go to church or not, or whatever else you want to have, that discussion can become a fairly big problem. And so this is where living an intentional life, having intentional thoughts about what you're wanting to do really come into play. Because when you are in the middle of a conflict, if you aren't being intentional, if you aren't being present of mind, you're going to allow your emotional side of your brain to just take over and just cause you to spin out. You can sit there and start yelling and saying things that you don't actually mean. It's just you're trying to put as much distance between you and the perceived threat as you possibly can. And this is where a lot of unnecessary thoughts come about. And so we start getting the perception of hurt feelings and things that are done that don't want to be done, and become big regrets later on. So one of the big things you want to do is, before you ever have a thought or have a fight, make sure that you understand what are the circumstances of the event, whatever is happening. When you have that fight, what are the circumstances behind that? And if you have the ideas of, and at least the forethought to pay attention to what the circumstances are, you can actually navigate around the circumstances a little better. And so you don't fall into the emotional pitfalls that a lot of us want to fall into when we are being unintentional with our thoughts. So what are you making the circumstances mean? A lot of times, like if our wife doesn't like the same movie that we do, we want to make it mean that, and we start having arguments about it. We'll start having the thought that, yeah, this is our wife telling us that we are terrible judges of cinema, or something along those lines. The perceived insult, and that's what we do, is we may end up making circumstances mean something very personal to us. When our wife, you're always late. Well, if you agree with what she's saying, then yeah, you're going to take an offense to that. You're going to take that personally. While if she said something that you're always late, but you're always, on time, then you're going to see that as just being an observation, and that's not going to matter as much. So you actually have a little bit of agreement for an emotion or for a thought to actually hurt, if you want to call it that. But if you're having disagreements with saying anything, you want to make sure that you're not falling into those emotional pitfalls. So you want to understand, what is it that you're feeling? What is it that, whatever emotion that is cropping up, bubbling up, can you actually describe what that is? Now, being guys is going to be a lot like looking at emotions is a lot like how we look at colors. For us guys, we've got the 8 primary colors. So we're going to have the primary emotions down, while girls, they're going to have the 4,000 primary colors. And so they're going to have all these other names for a lot of the different emotions. There's a lot of those little nuances. So you're not just fear, but we may have fear or shame, but also, all the other types of emotions that we can feel. But we're going to know, I'm not happy. Why are we not happy? Well, I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel ashamed, or all these other types of negative emotions. And if we can understand what those emotions are, and we can at least put a word to that emotion, we can navigate our world a little bit better. We can understand that I'm just feeling an emotion. That emotion means nothing. It is just a vibration that we feel throughout our body. It is not a matter that we're going to die because I feel anxious about the fact that my wife is calling me out about how often I pay a bill or not. When we realize that, yes, we are just feeling whatever emotion we end up feeling at that time, we then can decide, because our emotions are created by our thoughts. So if our thoughts are that she's, I failed her, I feel ashamed, then we can actually take that thought and decide, you know what, this thought of I failed my wife isn't going to happen. And a lot of times we'll have that thought of I failed my wife because I paid the bill late, and we'll feel the shame. But because the shame is such a unpleasant emotion, it's an uncomfortable emotion to have, we'll jump to something that gives us a little more power. Instead of having a disempowered emotion like shame, we'll have something like anger, frustration. These give us a little bit more sense of power. Are we more powerful because of them? No, we just have a sense of being able to take control when we get angry or when we feel frustrated. And so we'll actually use an emotion to cover up another emotion. But yet if we can actually look at what emotions we're feeling, we can actually sit back and examine, okay, I feel a little bit of shame here. And we can allow that shame to just kind of hang around for a while, and allowing ourselves allowing that emotion to just hang around is not going to last all that long. It's going to last a minute, minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes at tops, and then it fades away. The only time that we end up refeeling that emotion again is when we have that thought that kicked off that emotion once more. So you can choose to change a thought over to a different thought and have a different emotion in that place. So if your wife is yelling at you and she's getting worked up and you're yelling at her and you're getting worked up, and all of a sudden you catch yourself wanting to break the 97% rule, which, if you don't know what the 97% rule is, that is 97% of the stupid stuff you actually want to say. You don't want to say it. You want to keep your mouth shut. And so if you can have enough forethought to not say something stupid, you can actually help keep a fight more centered, if you will. But if you pay attention to what your thoughts are, you can actually change the emotion that you're feeling. You can actually change the results that you have. If you are wanting this disagreement to have a good resolution, you can actually change the thought that you have, which changes the emotion, which allows your actions to change the results of the disagreement, so that you may come to understand your wife better. Because if you want to know how you show it, how the emotions that you have, you also want to pay attention to what type, how you want to actually show up for your wife. Do you want to show up as the caring, concerned husband, or do you want to be the hot-headed prick? Which one do you want to be? You can be anything. You can show up as the ward cleaver of the family, or you could show up as Barney the drunk. You can show up any number of ways that you want to show up. The difference, though, is it showing up are you showing up the way that you actually intended to show up? Because if you don't, that's where you're going to have a lot of problems with yourself. And it's not that your wife is going to have problems with you. You're going to have problems with yourself. You could be the grumpy, sulking, overgrown child, or you can be the man who's got it together. And it takes practice, especially if the first time you're trying to apply. I want to show up as the caring man. Okay, well then, how do you do that? And you have to take the time to figure out and practice how are you going to show up. Because first time you go off and say, "Oh, I'm going to show up as the caring man," and things go sideways, you've got to figure out, okay, where did I screw up on this? Where did I not show up for my wife the way I wanted to show up? And go back and rinse and repeat. And so you can actually, as you're having an argument, you can actually ask yourself, is this how I want to show up?
And you can make a fairly honest decision at that time of, yeah, I'm in the right place. I want to show up as the calm, cool, collected person. And you still may go off the rails, which a lot of times we do. We try and we fail, and we try and we fail, and we try and we fail. And eventually we try and hey, we got pretty close to it that time. All right. We still failed, but we're a lot better than what we were before. So we now know we're on the right track. So is this how you want to show up? Are you showing yourself as being the concerned husband, or are you being the moody, grumpy guy who's in emotional childhood? Because if you're in one that you don't want to be, then how do you change that? And this is stuff that you'd want to do in what's called an after action report. What went wrong? What went right? What went wrong? And how do you change what went wrong into what went right? And so it's important to think and pay attention to, after everything's said and done, knowing that what she said had no bearing upon you. It was just her sharing her thoughts. And what you said, you can actually control, because there's only two things you can control yourself. And that is your thoughts, your actions. Your actions can being, well, did you say something like where you were being a jerk? Okay, then don't say the jerk stuff next time. Try that. See what happens with that. But also, what is the and again, we talk about what's the result that we want to get from this interaction. Did that result or come about? Are you being the man that you're wanting to be, or are you just being the nice guy, trying to patch things up, trying to smooth it all out so that you don't have to feel whatever emotions are being shared? Because a lot of nice guys, that's exactly what we want to do. We want to do the conflict avoidance at all costs. We don't want to be a part of the conflict. Let's just try to be friends, try to make things better, and avoid the uncomfortable, anxiety-ridden discomfort, the shame-riddled discomfort that we will experience with some of our emotions, some of the thoughts that we have from our emotions. And this is where so many men do slide and avoid being able to have a good, thorough, healthy disagreement, healthy conflict in their life, because we won't allow certain emotions to happen. We want to see at the end of the exchange, we want to allow ourselves to have this good feeling of that we won the fight. Well, it's a disagreement with your wife, so there's not an actual fight to win. It's not the purpose of the disagreement isn't to send her into the bedroom in tears and you get to sit on the couch sulking. That's not the main point. The main point is first to understand what that is that you're trying to accomplish. Most of the time, conflicts aren't bad. Conflicts are actually very beneficial to a relationship. And I get it. You're like, what? No, you don't want to have, it wants to be rainbows and unicorn farts all the time. No, you don't want those, because that gets real boring. One, it gets boring, but it also it doesn't allow you to grow. It doesn't allow your wife to grow. It doesn't allow your relationship to mature. You're going to have those hard, rough discussions at times. And those discussions aren't always pleasant, or rarely pleasant, actually. Those 4:00 in the morning discussions of that, where our wife wakes us up and goes, we need to talk. Those are the times where she has just hit her limit, and you can either fall into victim mode and not get anything resolved, or you can stay present with your wife and you can talk it out and you can be okay with the emotions that you're feeling. They're just emotions. Like I said, they're just vibrations you're feeling throughout your body. And you can choose to just not react to what you're feeling. You can choose to respond and express, I'm feeling a little confused here right now. I'm feeling a little disappointed. I'm feeling a little perturbed. Because you're allowing those emotions, you're not holding them back, because society, sadly, believes that men don't have emotions or men shouldn't show their emotions. And so they express to the world around, we need men to express emotions. The problem is that they're not, the folks who think men need to be expressing emotions aren't seeing when men express their emotions. When we are laughing and joking and having a good time, they're not saying, oh, look, it's a man. He's expressing his emotions. He's being happy. Man walks around grumbly. Oh, look, man's expressing expressing his emotions. He's being a jerk. They're seeing just part of what the emotions are. Men have all the same emotions that women do. We just show them in a different way. We talk about them and express our emotions in a completely different way than what women do. And so when they're being told men need to tamp down their emotions, no, that's not the case. Men express their emotions, express your emotions in a constructive way. Because if you don't, that's where and men who try to bottle them up and try to avoid those emotions are avoiding the exact same emotions that women avoid. And that's why women overeat. That's why men overeat. That's why there's all these other quote unquote addictions that are out there that aren't actually addictions. They're just badly handled coping mechanisms. All right. And so we have these different dis-eases within us. We don't feel at ease because of whatever we're holding back. We're fighting to keep this horrible 1.5 to 2 minute long emotional experience from happening, which sounds ridiculous. I get it. You're like going, what? It's just a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And we're trying to avoid it. And yeah, because we don't want the feeling. We don't like feeling ashamed. We don't like feeling frustrated. We don't like feeling any type of disempowered feeling of disempowerment. And so we turn to alcohol, drugs, food, porn, video games, even sex as a means to keep us from having to think the thought that will create the emotion that we need to feel. We never face the thoughts that are causing us the dis-ease. And so we keep turning to drink and we keep turning to drugs and video games and masturbation and porn and everything else as a means to do anything other than experience a short little emotion, a vibration that doesn't feel the greatest, but is not going to hurt you. We are afraid that we're going to die in sorrow. No, you're not going to die in sorrow. You're going to have an emotion. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel heartbroken. You're going to feel ashamed. Again, shame is one of those big ones because it caps with what we're failing to do. Men hate to feel that we have failed, because if we fail, then we are not good enough. We always, from the time we were young little boys, we look to our dads and ask them, are we good enough? We want to have that. That's the question we want answered is, are we good enough? And when our wife tells us that we have failed in something, we have that shame. We want to avoid that shame. And so we turn to other things, which makes us shameful, which piles on the shame. Instead of just allowing ourselves to feel that shame and be able to climb up the next hill to the joy and the fun that we want, we keep ourselves down in the valleys of sorrow. Now, one of the other things that actually happens is when we're in a fight, one of the goals we want to do is to actually understand what our spouse is about, understand why our spouse is upset, why she is upset for for whatever the reason is. It doesn't matter whether we think it's a dumb reason or a good reason or not. It's just she's upset for whatever reason. And there is a method that you can actually come to understand. It's called it's called the 4 pillars of effective communication. And it was created by, or not created by, but Tony Overbay of the Virtual Couch talks about it a lot, in that the 4 pillars are, and there's always a doc in here. I can never remember all 4 of them, but it's: do not assume ill intention, that your wife did not wake up to try to piss you off. All right. To have a fight. She didn't wake up that morning thinking, I'm going to have a fight with you, with my hubby. Don't dismiss the emotions. Don't dismiss the thoughts is the next one. And that is, don't go off saying you're wrong. Oh, you don't understand what's going on here. Every time you say something like that, you assume that she's doing it to piss you off, or you're telling her she's wrong. You're taking that line of communication and you're cutting it off. And another item that happens is when you, don't try to understand her. So you want to seek to understand before being understood. I believe that is Stephen Covey from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You want to make sure that you understand where she's coming from. Come to that realization, come to that understanding before you ever decide to start voicing your thoughts about it. Come to fully realize what your wife is talking about. And it's like, well, what about me? Well, what about you? You'll get your chance in due time. You just have to allow, you're being the bigger person right now. You're letting your wife have the floor. All right. You'll get your chance in time. So just slow it up just a little bit, just that much. And then don't go into victimhood. Don't be that guy that goes, oh, well, I can't do anything right anyhow. So why am I even going to try? Now you're making her have to come rescue you. And that again, severs the connection that y'all are wanting. So understand your spouse, get to understanding her. She will turn around and she'll want to understand you at a later date. But right now, this very moment instance, you're being present, listening to what she says. Now, the other thing is don't avoid that conflict. Like I said, there's a lot of people who are conflict avoidance, but when you avoid that conflict, what you end up doing is you're keeping the joy and the reconnection of resolution from happening. You are keeping the ability of people to come together, because when you have a disagreement, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff about makeup sex. Woohoo! But there's also just the reconnecting, both you and your wife coming back together and having the reconnection of the resolution actually happening. And when you allow that to happen, things become better. So this is why you want to have those arguments. You want to have those tough decisions. Don't just sit there and let resentment build because you're like, well, I'm not even going to talk to her because she's just going to blow it all out of proportion. And then we're going to have a big fight. And then I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be sleeping on the couch again. And then I wake up in the morning, my back hurts. And we make this whole line of story as to why we don't want to have the fight when we should go ahead and have the fight. Control what you're doing, because you have the ability to react or respond. If you react to an emotion, that's where things get out of hand. People start throwing stuff at each other and other things, and it starts getting physical, and that's never a good thing. You're never going to resolve the problem when you start going down that road. That's a horrible road to go down, and it's full of pain and full of anguish, and it's not ever of any benefit. But if you're present enough in mind that you can actually be responsible or able to respond to your thoughts and to what's happening, you can actually come together with what your wife is saying. Doesn't mean you're giving up your autonomy, nothing like that. It just means you're having a discussion, you're having an agreement, and you're having the ability to work the problem out. Now, if you are somebody who is wanting to figure this out, wanting to try to find a way to have better discussions and better means of communicating with your wife, then please, you can reach out to me. You can go to Relaxed Male, and that's males in a dude, relaxedmale.com/lovebirds, all one word. And there you can actually set up a time that we would actually have a discussion and see, can we work together? Can we have a ability to a session of being able to coach with each other and have a better relationship with our wives. And so if you are interested in that, again, relaxedmail.com/lovebirds. If anything in this episode rang a bell with you, really resonated with you, ask that you share it out. Share it on your Facebook, Instagram. Take it in, share it as a text message to that brother of yours that is struggling with his own problems. You can go to you can hit the share button on any of the podcasts apps that are out there. They all have a share button. Hit that share and share it out to them. Let them know that, hey, there's this podcast out here that's helping men become better men by helping them become better at their means of building a relationship with their wives. So guys, with that, I want to say thanks very much for listening. Y'all take care and y'all have a great rest of the week, and we will see y'all next Thursday. Till then, bye.